Alrighty guys, so we just learned some kind of important information. Someone mysteriously walked in with that chalky foot chalky stuff on their feet, which made Sabrina realize that person was probably the one that left those footprints when they found Mr. Grutner murdered. So let's continue reading chapter 6. By the time the bell rang, the entire class was looking at Puck like he was a rock star. Hilarious, one kid snorted as the students emptied into the hall. Puck absorbed their praise like a greedy sponge and agreed with each one wholeheartedly. According to Puck, he was indeed a genius. Sabrina had no interest in Puck's groupies. His eyes were glued on Wendell. Her eyes were glued on Wendell because he was being very suspect. She watched him hurry down the hallway, leaving a cloud of dust behind him. She rushed to follow. "Hey, stinkpot," Puck said, breaking away from his fans. "You're not supposed to leave my sight." Sabrina didn't reply. Instead, she darted through the crowds and dodged around open lockers as she trailed the chubby boy, Wendell. He raced down a flight of stairs and slipped through the door. But by the time Sabrina caught up with him, he had slammed the door behind him, and a sign read, "Boiler Room." "Where are you going?" Puck asked, grabbing Sabrina's wrist and pulling her back before she could open the door. "That Wendell kid, he knows something about Grutner's death," she replied, reaching the door. "I'm going to follow him if you would just let me go." "You're not supposed to run away without me." "Well, you're here now. Well, let's go." "Sorry, but we're on a tight schedule. I have toilets to clog and overflow. Making chaos doesn't just happen. It's a lot of hard work." Puck, he went into the boiler room. "I bet it's dirty and gross in there," Sabrina said, trying to play the boy's biggest weakness, filth. "I bet there's a greasy floor you could roll around in and ruin that shirt." Puck's eyes lit up, and he nodded vigorously. It was nice to see that she could manipulate him when it was important. She reached for the doorknob again, but before she could turn it, a muscular, grizzly-looking man stepped in her way. "Where do you kids think you're going?" he asked. He was tall and strong, with arms as big as tree trunks and a chest as wide as our family car. The patch on his blue coveralls told me his name was Charlie, and the smell coming off him told me his uniform needed a trip to the laundromat. But it was the mop slung over his shoulder that told me he was the school janitor, and the boiler room was his domain. "I was just looking for my next class," Sabrina lied. "In the boiler room?" Charlie laughed, spraying his beef and cigarette breath all over him. "Ain't nothing in there but a bunch of toilet brushes and brooms." "Toilet brushes?" Puck squealed happily. "That sounds disgusting. Can I have one?" Charlie gave the kids a confused look. "Our mistake," she said. Together, she and Puck headed down the hallway. She snuck a peek back, hoping Charlie had moved on, but he was still there, leaning against the door. "I could lure him upstairs and push him out a window," Puck offered. "Nah, you can't do that. We'll come back later. But for now, just go to your next class," Sabrina replied. "Where's that?" She snatched his schedule out of his hand and looked at it. "Puck, you're in all of my classes." "The old lady in Canis negotiated it with the principal," the boy explained. Sabrina knew what kind of negotiating Mr. Canis could do. Now Sabrina would have Puck practically riding on her back. There were several kids walking behind them, and one of them laughed loudly and said, "Hello, smelly stinkpot." Sabrina spun around to see who had insulted her, but the kids had already walked away. "Smelly stinkpot, what does that even mean?" Sabrina asked Puck. "Who knows?" he said. "Kids can just be cruel." It would be hours before Bella stopped her in the hallway and removed the sign Puck had taped on Sabrina's back. It read, "Pleased to meet you. I'm Smelly Stinkpot." He's such a trickster. The rest of the day Sabrina and Puck kept a watchful eye out for Wendell, but he appeared to have vanished. During a break between classes, Puck even rushed outside and summoned some pixies with his flutes to look for the chubby suspect. As Sabrina and Puck waited to hear more, they went from one class to the next, and in each the trickster king did his best to humiliate his housemate. Unlike a normal kid, Puck didn't bring pencils or notebooks to class. He just brought what he called his essentials: his squirt gun, his stink pellets, a shock buzzer, and his personal favorite, the whoopee cushion. Now, to Sabrina, fart jokes were old-fashioned. She believed kids were pretty sophisticated in the 21st century and that it would take more than an obnoxious noise to get a modern kid laughing. But unfortunately, she was wrong. Puck let the whoopee cushion go in every class, making it seem like Sabrina were having intestinal issues. And the kids thought it got funnier and funnier. Eventually, he added a little more acting to his routine, pretending to gag on Sabrina's imaginary fumes. When this proved to be wildly popular with the kids, it quickly evolved to an elaborate death scene, which ended with Puck shaking with convulsions on the floor. His performance and Sabrina's threats of seriously beating him helped the two rack up an impressive 5 detentions apiece by midday. At that rate they were going, Sabrina suspected they would be in detention until she was about 25. So they headed to the gym class. She smiled, knowing revenge was within her grasp. Puck was about to get what he had coming to him. "Okay, class," Miss Spengler said as he tossed the ball back and forth between her hands. "We've got a new student today. His name is Robin, and he says he's never actually played dodgeball." Even from across the room, Sabrina could see Toby and Natalie's eyes light up with excitement. Bella, who was standing nearby, leaned over to her. "Your friend is in serious trouble. You should warn him." Sabrina grinned. "He'll be just fine." Puck waved to everyone, unaware that the attention was the last thing he wanted in this class. Once the class got an eyeful of him, Miss Spangler divided them into 2 teams. Puck and Sabrina found themselves standing next to each other. "How do you play this game?" he asked. "People throw balls at you," she said, "and if they hit you, then you're out." "Let me get this straight. The object of this game is to hit someone with a ball? You can hit them in the head?" Sabrina nodded, watching the opposing team to avoid a sneak attack. "And you can hit them as hard as you want?" "That's encouraged, but be careful. If they catch the ball you throw, then you're out." "Does anyone ever catch the ball?" Rarely." Puck rubbed his hands together eagerly. "It's twisted. It's brilliant. Are you any good at this dodgeball?" "I used to be," Sabrina grumbled. Tony and that big goon Natalie on the opposing team, and both of them are staring at her with evil grins. They were like vultures, waiting to take a bite out of her. Miss Spengler blew her whistle, and a ball whizzed past Sabrina's head and smacked right into Bella. Sabrina was surprised. The day before, the girl had been so agile, but now Bella had actually stepped into the ball, as if she wanted to be knocked out of the game. It's kind of weird. The blonde girl shrugged her shoulders. "Good luck," she said to Sabrina as she made her way over to the sidelines. Toby winged his ball straight at Sabrina's head, and just before it smashed into her nose, Puck reached over and caught it. "Toby's out," Miss Spangler shouted. Dejected, the boy scowled and sulked over to the sidelines. "Now, what do I do with it?" Puck asked. "Well, throw it at somebody," Sabrina said impatiently. Puck wound up, ready to smack Sabrina right in the face with the ball. "Not me, you idiot!" she cried, pointing to the other team. "Them!" Puck threw the ball at the red-haired boy standing in the front. It rocketed across the room like a missile, hit the red-headed kid in the chest, and sent him flying backwards 10 yards. The class stopped playing and let out a collective gasp. "Kevin is out," Miss Spengler said, unsympathetic to the boy's obvious injuries. Every kid looked at Puck as if he had just suggested adding another day to the school week. Puck was public enemy number one. Balls came flying in every direction, and the boy managed to duck, jump, and somersault around everyone. He bent in impossible directions that no normal human being ever could. He stood on his hands, let balls fly between his feet. He taunted everyone, which made them want to smash him in the face even more. Puck, however, began to collect their weak tosses. In no time, he had collected almost every ball in the game and laid them at his feet. When the kids realized his strategies, they whimpered. Even Natalie let out a little cry. Puck picked up the first of his collection and winged it at the boy standing nearby. The ball hit the kid so hard he slid across the floor and out of the gym door. Puck picked up another ball and tossing them at possible speeds, and a tall, skinny girl hit her so hard her shoes flew off her feet. One ball hit a group of kids, bouncing off one and hitting the next and the next until they all tipped over like bowling pins. Even Miss Spangler got cracked so hard in the head on the back she nearly swallowed her whistle. By the time it was over, Sabrina, Puck, and Natalie were the only ones left standing. No boundaries, Miss Spangler said. What's that mean? Puck asked. It means we can go after her, Sabrina said, pointing at Natalie. He clapped his hands like a happy baby. School is awesome, he shouted. He picked up a ball and handed it to Sabrina. Sabrina was so happy she could have kissed Puck. And quickly shaking off that thought, she helped him stalk the big girl around the gym. Natalie huffed like an angry bull. You'll drop those balls right now if you know it's good for you, she threatened. You're possibly right, Sabrina said, throwing the ball at the girl as hard as she could. It smashed into the side of Natalie's face, and she fell down. It was the second time in 2 days that Sabrina had knocked the girl off her feet. Natalie is out, Miss Spangler shouted. No sides. Sabrina turned to congratulate Puck just as a ball crashed into the side of her face and sent her reeling. The class cheered and Puck raised his hands in triumph. I won, he cried, and then ran around the gym shouting, victory lap! By the time lunch rolled around, Sabrina was ready to strangle the boy. So when she saw Sabrina's smiling face in the cafeteria, it was like seeing a rainbow. The little girl was surrounded by her classmates, the little girl was surrounded by her classmates who, as they had the day before, hovered around her. When Daphne spotted Sabrina and Puck, she excused herself and joined them at the table at the far corner of the room. How's your day been? She asked. It's been horrible, Sabrina said. Tell my sister I wasn't talking to her, Sabrina said to Puck. I was talking to you. Puck grinned. The squirt says she isn't talking to you. Sabrina rolled her eyes. How long are you going to be mad at me? Remind my sister that I just said I was not talking to her, the little girl said to Puck. Get over it, Sabrina cried. Tell my sister that when she stops being a snot, I will get over it. She says that you have to stop being so disgusting and booger-crusted free, and she will honor you with conversation, but until then, shove off, Puck said. This is ridiculous, Sabrina huffed, staring down at her serving of not-so-green beans. Ask my sister what ridiculous means, Daphne said. She wants to know what... I heard her, Sabrina growled at the boy. It means you're being silly. It means you're acting like a baby. Tell my sister that I'm rubber and she's glue, and whatever she says bounces off of me and sticks to you. Your sister says, Puck, Sabrina shouted. She turned back to her food and took a bite of something that she guessed was maybe chicken, but she guessed wrong. Well, Sabrina, if you don't want to talk to me, then you don't want to know what clue I found, she said. Sabrina's face lit up as bright as the sun. What kind of clue? Are you done with the silent treatment? She asked her sister. It depends on how good the clue is. You know those dusty footprints we were following last night? Well, there's a kid in my homeroom whose feet were covered in the same dust. Tried to follow him, but he slipped into the boiler room, Sabrina said. We're going to have to come back after everyone's gone and do some snooping. Daphne laughed and hugged Sabrina. Very clever, the little girl said. I'll talk to you again. Puck sniffed the cream corn on his tray, reached down with his bare hand and scooped some up. Then he licked it with his tongue. Any of those disgusting warts show up yet? Miss White told me you don't get warts from touching frogs, the little girl growled. Not even frog girls. I'm sorry to see the little joke die, the boy sighed as the cream corn dripped off his wrist and onto his clean shirt. I had you completely freaked out. Hardy har har, Puck. You're so un-punk rock, Daphne said, turning her attention to her sister. So, what's the plan? First, you have to get detention, Sabrina said as she eyed her gray hamburger. What? Daphne cried. Puck got us in trouble, so we have to stay after school. Since the two of us have to stay, you might as well get in trouble too. We should try to stick together. How am I supposed to get detention? The little girl asked. I don't know, insult your teacher or something. I can't do that. To Miss White? Yes, you can. Be annoying, Sabrina suggested. You do it to me every day. Daphne looked as if she were going to cry. When the children met at the end of last period, Daphne was back to giving Sabrina the silent treatment. She wouldn't explain how she got detention, nor would she look at Sabrina in the eye. Sabrina shrugged. If she worried every time her sister got mad at her, she would never have time to do anything else. Daphne would get over it. The important thing was they were all together. Nothing bad could happen when they're all together, right? They walked down the hallway towards the detention room, and Puck had nothing but complaints. I can't believe I have to be subject to this torture, he whined. I am royalty. I say anything I do is inappropriate, is nothing short of criminal. Everything I do is majestic and regal. So when you're picking your nose in class, that's regal? Sabrina asked. Absolutely, he said. Back home, people stand out in the freezing rain for days just to hear a rumor about how I picked my nose. Ugh. This detention is going to be horrible. I've heard stories. Some kids go in and never come out, and the ones who do, they're never the same. Aren't you being a little dramatic? Not at all, Puck insisted. Whatever that means. Sabrina rolled her eyes and opened the detention room door. Immediately she put her hand over Daphne's eyes. Miss Hart lay on her back in the corner of the room. Snow was struggling at her feet in another, and in the center was a skeleton in a shredded overalls with a name patch still visible. Charlie. The mark of the scarlet hand was on the skeleton's chest. See, I told you, Puck said proudly. Daphne, don't look, Sabrina said. Daphne pulled herself away from her sister and rushed to Miss White. The teacher didn't look seriously injured, but she seemed dizzy and disoriented. The children helped her to her feet and sat her on the desk in the classroom. When Miss White was settled, Sabrina knelt down to her cheek on Miss Hart. She was breathing normally, but she was out cold. What happened? Sabrina asked. Miss White looked confused and mumbled, but only one word was distinguishable. Wendell. Wendell did this to you? Daphne asked. Suddenly there was a loud thump outside, followed by a pained moan. The children ran to the window, and there was Wendell, laying flat on his back on the ground below. The boy had obviously jumped out of the window. When he saw the children looking at him, Wendell climbed to his feet and darted off into the woods as fast as his chubby legs could carry him. Hey! Sabrina shouted. Come back here! Puck's enormous wings burst out of his back. I'll go get him. Sabrina grabbed his arm before he could fly away. No, someone might see you, she cried, dragging Puck back from the window. Instead, she crawled out herself, dropping 5 feet from laying safely on the ground, and Daphne followed, and then Puck. Those wings had vanished into his back. He's headed to the forest, Puck shouted, and the 3 children sprinted across the field in hot pursuit. Wendell was not a fast runner, but his big head start allowed him to disappear into the forest long before the children ever reached the tree line. We lost him, Sabrina groaned. He left no trail, Puck said, pointing at He left a trail, Puck said, pointing at deep, muddy footprints, and he led the others into the forest. They followed the footprints up the hill and then along a creek, dodging rocks and slippery slopes. He's confused, Puck continued. He's going in one direction and then turns back and goes the other way. Why? Sabrina asked. Because he's a moron, Puck said. It's slowing him down. We'll find him soon. The children continued to search, weaving in and out of thick brambles and leaping over downed trees. Soon Puck was proven correct. They cornered Wendell up against a steep, rocky wall. When he realized he couldn't escape, Wendell whimpered like a dog. There's nowhere to go, Puck said. We know you're the killer. We're going to take you back and call the cops. It's all over in no time. Don't worry, I'll hear the electric chair only hurts for a second. It's not what you think, Wendell begged, wiping his nose with his handkerchief. I didn't hurt anyone. Then why are you running? Sabrina asked. I'm trying to help, he cried. I'm trying to stop them. Stop who? Daphne asked. The less you know, the better you're off, Wendell said, his voice talking in an old accent, like he was an actor in one of those old movies Sabrina's mother loved to watch on the weekends. The kinds where they were in black and white and featured tough guy detectives. This is for your own good, sweethearts, Wendell said as he pulled a small harmonica out of his pants pocket and raised it to his lips. He blew a long, high note, and the whole forest erupted with chatter and scurrying. The noise grew louder and louder, and Sabrina wondered if at any moment the horrible monster or giant would just charge out of the brushes. But the noise suddenly stopped, and a furry brown bunny hopped out from behind a tree. It was the cutest thing she had ever seen, and it bounded over to them and stopped at their feet. It looked up at the children with soft, warm eyes and made a little twittering noise. Oh, look at you, Daphne cried as she knelt down to pet it. You're adorable. The rabbit snapped viciously at her hand and let out a horrible, angry hiss. Evil bunny, the little girl said, yanking her hand away. So that's what your harmonica does? Puck laughed. It sends a rabbit to kill us? Wendell didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The silence was filled by the sounds of hundreds of rabbits pouring into the clearing that jostled with one another for room and turned and faced Wendell as if he were some kind of general. Guys, I forgot to tell you the other clue I discovered, Sabrina said nervously. Wendell is the son of an ever after. The Pied Piper is his father. The same guy who controlled all those rats. I guess the magic runs in the family? Puck laughed. Wendell, if you think a bunch of hairy little garden thieves are going to stop us, you're sadly mistaken. Call off the fur balls or I'm going to skin the lot of them and make the warmest winter coat you've ever seen. Wendell lifted the harmonica to his mouth and another note sang through the air. The rabbits instantly turned and faced the kids. Their soft brown eyes were now red with anger. Their muscles twitched eagerly and their mouths opened wide. Get 'em! Wendell shouted, and the first wave of the furry zombie army sprang to the children. That is creepy. Alrighty, guys, that is the end of chapter 6. Don't forget to go ahead right now and write the quick little summary so that Ms. Hutchins and I know that you've read or listened to chapter 6.